Hello everyone, welcome to my jungle story. I'm Jacqueline and today I'm going to be giving you a care guide for the Monstera Constellation, and I'm also going to be potting this one up in a much bigger pot because it is quite root bound. I hope you enjoy and you found this useful. Get a cup of tea or a cup of coffee, enjoy, and I hope that at the end of this video you decide to go for it and you decide to get yourself a Thai constellation, because I watched many videos like this until I finally made the decision, and I am so incredibly happy that I did. Alrighty, so I'm gonna get straight into it and talk about the care tips, guide, all of the different factors for this plant. Like I said, I have watched many of videos like this before I actually even decided to purchase one of these plants, because what I read or what I had seen on internet, I was very nervous because this plant does have a little bit of a history of getting root rot, and the more research I did about it, it's actually in the genetics of this plant, which I thought was really interesting. Specifically with juvenile plants are obviously a little bit more sensitive to getting root rot just because they're a lot smaller and, you know, they're not as mature, you know, they don't have the history, which is, you know, normal. But even with a big one like this, you can still get root rot, which is why I was very on the fence about this one, because I did not at the time have a Monstera elbow and I was kind of deciding between the two. Should I get a Thai? Should I get an elbow? And I decided to go for this one because of the variegation. So the Monstera Thai constellation has very stable variegation. It is also man-made. So this one does not appear in nature, in the wild. This was made in a lab in Thailand, hence the name Thai constellation. And constellation comes from the fact that it has very starry-like variegation. And like I said, it is stable. So when you, for example, propagate the Thai constellation, you are guaranteed to have more stable variegation, whereas with the elbow you can have the chance of it reverting on you, whereas with the Thai constellation that is quite likely. I'm not going to say it's 100% not likely, but it is almost 100% likely that you're not going to lose that variegation, which is why I decided to go for this one. Also, with the elbow, you can get a lot more patches of variegation, of the white variegation, and that can lead to browning. Now, I do have a leaf right here that does have a little bit of browning on it, but that is due to a recent change in conditions, but I will get to that later on. So yes, the Thai constellation comes from Thailand. It was man-made, has stable variegation. So key, light-wise, this plant lacks high light. I wouldn't put this plant in direct sun. However, mine does get some direct sun. You can acclimate the plant to that. And how you can do that is by slowly introducing more sunlight to the plant. You can put a sheer curtain in front of it. In my case, I have this matte finish on my south-facing window, which is where this plant lives, and it filters the sun. It still gets direct sun, specifically in autumn and winter because of the position of the sun. And on the top, it does get some direct light, but it's honestly maybe only for 2 hours maximum. And for the rest, it gets filtered bright light. And it is very happy. And the reason why this plant needs a lot of bright light is because it is variegated. And the variegated parts of the leaves, they can't soak up as much sun as the green parts of the leaves. If you look, for example, at a Monstera deliciosa, that plant, I've had that plant living in very low light conditions, and it's still grows like a weed, whereas this one, because of the variegation, it is stunting the plant. So the green parts of the leaves have to work extra hard because they lack, the white parts of the leaves, they lack chlorophyll. So that way the green parts have to, they have to work extra hard to soak up that light that they really need to grow. When I first got it, I actually started acclimating it. So when I first got it, I put it on a north-facing window and it got morning direct sun. I got this plant this year in the beginning of May, and it was already quite a nice sized plant. It had these leaves. So all of these leaves here, it had 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So that's 6 leaves. And this leaf was actually starting to, it was still hardening off. It was still quite light green when I unboxed it. So since May, it has given me 3 new leaves. This is the latest one. I'm going to turn it so you can see it. But yeah, it's huge, and I definitely think that has to do with the fact, the conditions that I gave it. So I put it on my son's little chair just to kind of give it a bit of a pedestal. But yes, I had this plant in the beginning on the north facing window. It got direct morning sun, and then about a month after I had it, I put it on the south facing window, and I put it on my desk, which is it's almost touching the window. And it's actually, as soon as I put it on that spot, so a month after I got it, it gave me those 3 leaves. It really, really likes highlight and definitely appreciates the southern exposure. And I definitely do think that the filtered sun that I have, that's very, very beneficial to this plant, because I think if I gave it too much direct sun, it would burn the leaves in the summer. And yeah, I haven't had this plant in the spring yet. I had it sort of end of spring, beginning of summer, but the sun then, the position that it is, there was no direct sun on this plant. But now in autumn and in winter, it is getting some direct sun, but not a lot. So from that, going on to this specific little browning that I've gotten, I am almost 100% sure that I know what it is, and that is due to changes in humidity. So in the last month, temperatures have changed a lot. I live in Belgium, and right now it is the middle of November, and the last 2 weeks we have had some pretty cold temperatures. This week is the first week that it's going under 0 degrees. And where it is living is actually a spot where there is a little bit of cold air that does come in. And as soon as those temperatures changed, I've noticed that this happened, this little brown spot on a white pot. Now, this is normal, this can happen, but it happened almost instantly as soon as it started getting a lot colder. We do have a pot, because this is quite an old house, we have shutters, and the pulling system for the shutters, there's a little gap at the bottom, and cold air can get in there. This house is insulated, but because it is very old and does have a lot of old features still, there are still some cracks where some cold air can get into. And as soon as the temperatures changed outside and the floor heating came on, this happened, because obviously it's very warm air in here, and then with that really cold air coming through that gap where it is standing, that's not a very good combination. I actually in the winter try and open windows and get a lot of ventilation. I still use a fan, and I've noticed that the fan is also an air purifier, that the display on the fan says that the air is it's not as good as it was in spring and summer, and that is just because of, you open a window a lot more in spring and summer, and the ventilation is just a lot better then. Also, the heating's not on then. So the heating being on now, I can put my hand on the floor and I can feel that it's on. It does also create very dry air. So humidity-wise, I think this plant does appreciate higher humidity, 100%. I would say between the 60 to 70% humidity. Now, I have heard other people say different things, but that is just my experience. This care guide is based on my experience with this plant. I've only had this plant in my collection for 6 months, but because of the amazing success that I've had with it and the rapid growth that I've had from this plant, I wanted to make a care guide because I feel like the Thai Constellation has been branded as a very slow grower, but that has not been my experience with this plant. So I want to share that, you know, and it is one of my favorite plants in my collection. So obviously care-wise, I am very on top of it. I do have a humidifier that is running the whole time. It has only been back on the last month. As soon as the heating came on, then I've had to start using my humidifier because pretty much all summer and half of spring, I would say, so about 4 or 5 months, I didn't have to use my humidifier. It was a standard above 65% in this room. And now I've noticed it's gone down to like 42%. When we switch it off at night and we come back downstairs in the morning, the indicator says like between the 40 to 50%, which is not ideal for the tropical plants that I keep in my home. So that humidifier is on pretty much all the time except for at night time. And I set it for a 65%. So it goes up to 65%. And as soon as it hits 65, it kind of keeps it within that range and it comes on and off to keep it at 65. But I also do other things, like for example, I don't have a dryer. I air dry my washing, and as soon as I do that as well, I notice that the humidity goes up. You can also, if you do have a dryer, leave that open after you've used it. That can also increase. There's lots of different ways that you can increase humidity, but I would definitely recommend a humidifier just because all of the other things like pebble trays and all of that, it's just a little bit more high maintenance, whereas with a humidifier, you just have to fill up with water and it does its own thing. That leads me on to temperature for this plant. This plant thrived in summer, and that is when it gave me those 3 leaves. It loves the heat. Specifically when we had heat waves, I noticed this plant was just going for it, and roots were also going crazy at this point. So this plant does prefer higher temperatures. I would say between, it gets very, I mean, I have floor heating now, so it gets very, very warm in this part of the house. Lower temperatures created this browning on the white parts of. Luckily, I don't have that many white parts, which is also why I loved the Thai Constellation, is that it's very, the variegation is very speckly. And I wanted that because I wanted to prevent this from happening, because that does irritate me looking at it. But, you know, that's part of the seasons, part of the cycle. I will just, you know, I'll cut it off and it will be fine. But the latest leaf that it gave me does not have any of those pure white bits, which I'm very happy about. So another very important factor is the soil mix with this plant. Also something that I did a lot of research about, and I will show you the soil mix that it's a DIY soil mix, I make it myself, but I will show you that when I repot this plant after we've gone over all of the care tips. But the soil mix that I use is a combination of a lot of different things. So you can go out and buy specific soil mixes for Monstera, but the one thing I have noticed that the Monstera branded soil mix that you can buy, they can sometimes be a little bit dense because Monstera roots are very, very thick. They hold on to a lot more moisture. So I've seen people use a more dense mix so that they don't have to water as frequently. Whereas with the Monstera Thai Constellation, because it is so prone to root rot and is very sensitive to it, and it is in the genetics, it's not specific to your Thai Constellation or anything, it is just within the plant. I 100% recommend going for a very, very chunky mix. And what I have in my chunky mix is perlite, orchid bark, cocoa husk, cocoa coir, worm castings. Usually do a mix of coarse zeolite and pumice, But this time I do not have that, but I do have coarse semi-hydro mix. So I've just mixed that in. It's in essence the same thing. It just has a couple of extra components to it, but still it's going to make sure that there's enough aeration in there and, you know, make it extra chunky. And then also something that I also like to add is activated charcoal. I do not have that this time, so that's okay. But that is something that I do like to add into the mix. And yes, I think that is everything that I have in the mix. Oh yes, I do also add vermiculite, just like a little bit of vermiculite, 1 scoop in a big bin, so not a lot. It is good for like those little bit more of finer roots, the secondary roots that are created. But for the most part, that is it that I have in the soil mix. You can see, you can see it's very rooted. This big white root here is actually from this point here, from the latest note. Well, no, yeah, this plant is honestly growing like crazy for me. It is not a slow grower in my home, but this white root is from this point here. It's just gone insane, absolutely insane. It's just, yeah, it's so juicy and thick. So yeah, there you can really see how nice and thick these roots can get. But yeah, it's very rooted, but it's in a very, very chunky mix. And I did that on purpose because I was very scared to overwater this plant. And in combination with that, I would also recommend a clear pot. Now, I have been waiting over a month for this specific order that I made for clear pots because I needed a bigger one. Right now, it is in a 19 centimeter one, and I only repotted this June. So it's rooted very, very well. And I wanted to give it a nice big pot. So this is the pot that I'm going to be repotting it in. And this is I don't think it says, but I think this is a 24. It's either 22 or 24 centimeter one. And it's got a lot of aeration. I did a lot of digging see, it's got slips here as well. Yeah, I did a lot of digging for this, and I found this on Temu. It was a set because it's not completely clear like the other one. It's got a matte finish, but as you can see, I'm still going to be able to see the roots. But I wanted this because many of times I have gone to water this plant, which leads us on to watering. Yes, I've gone to water this plant and it's actually not needed it. So clear pots has been my savior for this plant, but because I think that I would have had a case of root rot. Just the amount of time, specifically when we had a heat wave, I went to water this plant and I looked and it was actually perfectly fine. It also this is a ceramic pot, so it does keep moisture very nicely and it sits on the pot. So at the bottom, there is a little bit of like a moisture pocket. And I think that's also the reason why this plant has been so happy. But right now what I'm going to have to do is, oh my word, this is so dusty and dirty. I'm going to have to clean this. Yeah, this is a basket that it's actually from IKEA. It came with a plant stand that I bought, and this is all I have that's big enough for this pot. And I have one of these. These also came with trays that I'm just going to put in. So that way I can, yeah, I am going to see, but at the same time, you know, I'm okay with that. I'm fine with that. It's just, this is what's really, really important. So I water this plant every 2 weeks. And I've noticed that this last month, I was able to go 3 weeks without watering this plant, just because the heating has only really switched on in the last month. And humidity, I am keeping it high in this room. I also have a lot of plants. So plants naturally boost humidity anyway. So with the humidifier, I have many humidifiers. I also have a humidifier by my alocasia. I have a humidifier, well, I have 2 tiny aroma diffusers, but I use them for, you know, they boost humidity anyway. And then I also have my big humidifier, which is on pretty much all the time. The small aroma humidifiers, they are only on for 6 hours a day. So, but yes, plants naturally boost humidity anyway. But the last time I watered this plant was actually a couple of days ago, but the time before that was 3 weeks. So I was able to go 3 weeks without watering this plant. And if I didn't have the clear pot, I would have 100% watered it earlier than it actually needed it. I think it's also because Monsteras have such chunky roots that they store onto moisture a lot better. And because the Thai Constellation is so prone to root rot, that is also a reason why having it in a chunkier mix. I make it even more chunky than what they recommend because of that, because I am an underwaterer, so I guess me and this plant get along very, very well. But yeah, it's just one of those things that you kind of got to kind of learn how your plants react in your environment, in your home. And in my conditions, in my situation, I don't have to water this plant a lot at all. Even when we had a heat wave, I think even then, I only watered this every 2 weeks. I would rather let this one dry out a little bit than keep it too moist. Pests. So this plant has had pests. It doesn't have any damage because I do watch this plant like a hawk. It is one of my baby plants, but I'm going to see if I can show you where I saw the beginnings. Yes. It was only on one leaf that I saw the beginning of juvenile thrips. So that's all this plant has ever had. And, oh geez, I'm gonna have to, this is not easy. Okay, my mic fell off, so I had to reposition it. But I don't know if it's gonna be able to pick up. But on this leaf, this was one of the newer leaves. There is on the corner here, there is like a little bit of browning. So with juvenile thrips, they kind of go for the, what do you call it? It's the petioles. It's the, yeah, it's specifically on juvenile plants that you can see it. I don't really know if it's going to pick up, but I noticed there was a little bit of browning there, and they were really, really tiny. I'm trying to see if I can show you anywhere else. Oh, wait. I can show you here. Yes, that is a lot better. So there you're going to be able to see it. It almost looks like something's been sucking at the leaf. And that was the juvenile thrips. They were, they were buzzing up there, getting ready. And that was actually very unfortunate with a plant haul that I did. Yeah, I unboxed plants and there was thrips in there. And about 2 weeks after that, I noticed juvenile thrips on this plant. So yes, that was very unfortunate. But because I watched this plant like a hawk, I was able to get on top of it. I treated it with multi-sect KB. That's just what was recommended to me in the garden center. It is a systemic, so it's not planet friendly or anything, but it does the job really, really good. I've only ever had to use one dosage with the multi-sect, and it really does the job. The plant actually absorbs the product so that any thrips, juvenile thrips, adult thrips, whatever it is, bites into the plant, they die. So it really does a good job, but you do have to be careful, like roundabouts, if you're hitting it with a grow light or sunlight or anything like that, just to keep the plant a little bit more shaded for about 24 hours after applying the product, because you will get burning, like your leaves will start to look like someone burnt them with a lighter. So yes, you do have to be careful with that, but I used that and I didn't have an issue with it again. So I've only had thrips, juvenile thrips with this plant once. And for the rest, I have had a pretty serious outbreak of spider mites in my home this year. I'm on top of it now. I don't have them anymore now, but this plant did not have spider mites. I've also had mealies on my south-facing window. It also didn't have mealies. Yeah, it's just, I don't really have an issue with fungus gnats with this plant because it's a very, very chunky mix. And usually fungus gnats, they prefer a more dense soil mix. But so yeah, it's only really been thrips with this plant, and I saw it pretty quickly. Unfortunately, you know, it can leave pretty nasty damage, so I'm happy that I was very quick to see it. Because also one thing that is really nice about the Thai constellation is it is a plant that does hold on to leaves for a very long time. I have not had, it's still even down here, got probably one of its first leaves. This little teeny tiny baby. Yeah, it holds on to leaves really nicely. The leaves are also nice and thick and robust. It's just, oh, I am so glad I made the decision to get this plant. It is just one of my favorites. And then going on to the last point, and that is propagation. So you can propagate this plant the exact same way you can propagate Monstera deliciosa. You know, they're all from the same branch. It's really, really easy. You have, here you can see, the internodal spacing on a Monstera Thai constellation is a lot shorter than a deliciosa or an elbow or whatever. It is a lot smaller. As you can see, it's only about that much. Whereas with a Monstera, it can be that much between each leaf. You know, it can be quite a lot. So I think that's also why it's considered to be quite a slow grower. Not in my experience with this plant. Maybe it will slow down now when I give it a repot. I don't know. But I did purposely buy a little bit of a larger plant because I just wanted it to, I wanted the wow factor, first of all, and I knew that it would just do better buying it a little bit bigger. But yes, to propagate this plant, if you just cut in between each node, you can start a new plant. You can propagate it in any way you really want to. I would recommend for Monstera in water. That's the best. I've had the best experience with propagating Monstera in water, and I think it's also just a little bit more of a safer route, but you can propagate it in any way. You can put it straight into a mix like this. You can put it into perlites. You can, you know, experiment. You can do it in lots of different ways, but Monstera are very easy to propagate. So, you know, if I do ever have to propagate this plant, which the rate that it's growing at the moment, I'm probably going to have to do that at a certain point anyway, because I can't have an absolutely huge, even now, it is pushing it for space-wise. It takes up half a desk, and we have a changing table next to the desk, and it's getting to the point where this big leaf is getting in the way a little bit. So yes, that does make me a little bit nervous. I would really like to keep this plant here, but I also obviously know that the changing table is not going to be there forever. So I'm going to do my best to try and keep this plant on the south facing window because I think it really, really appreciates it. And I would very much recommend putting one of those matte privacy screens on your window because it has made such a difference, not only for this plant, but I also keep all of my succulents, cacti, and Hoya on my south-facing window, and they are thriving. So highly, highly recommend instead of blinds or anything like that. And also make sure you get, because I know there's different tones that you can get, but get one that's quite thick. This is quite a thick one. It's also a little bit more in the expensive side. It's probably about the same amount that you would buy for blinds, but we wanted one that was nice and thick to protect the plants because on a south-facing window, this is also a very, very big window, and in the summer, it gets very hot. Very hot. Sometimes we have to put the shutters down, which I don't like doing because my plants obviously won't appreciate that, but it can get very, very hot in this front room. Very, very hot. Popping in here to remind you that fertilizing, very, very important. I had written this down and I don't know why I didn't cover this topic, but anyway, I think it's because I just got so excited to getting to repot this plant. But yes, fertilization. So because I do not water this plant very frequently, I do the exact recommended dosage that they say on the back of the bottle for this plant every single time I water. Like I said, I don't water this plant very frequently, which means that it probably only really gets fertilized once a month, if that. So whatever fertilizer you use, look on the back of the bottle and see what it says. With most of my plants, I do a very diluted form, but with this one, I keep it to exactly what they recommend, just to make sure that this plant gets the nutrients that it needs. I don't use slow fertilizer, so a liquid fertilizer for me is just the route that I go, but you can go any route that you want. Also, the added worm castings to the mix is also a added bit of nutrients, but I don't wait or anything. I just fertilize every single time I water this plant. So yes, that is all of my tips for taking care of this plant. I hope that this was helpful in any way whatsoever, and I hope that if you apply some of these tips, you can get faster growth from your Monstera thai. I am blown away by the growth rate of this plant. I really, really am. I can see here, as I showed you, this big leaf here is the latest leaf. It's still, I don't know, it's still got a little bit of, it's still not 100% same color green as the other leaves, but I can already see here, and this is what I mean with amazing. First of all, these two roots here that are coming out, these were only formed less than a month ago, and as I showed you, they have grown like a beast. And this all, as you can see, this is all fresh. It's like pushing out even more. But this point here, wait, you see the point there where the new leaf is going to come out? It's starting to bulge even more, and every single week it becomes thicker and thicker and thicker. So I feel like this plant is going to give me another leaf pretty soon, before the end of this year, I think. Like I said, we are in the middle of November at the moment. So follow me on Instagram and I will definitely pop on there if I get, well, I'll probably do it in an update video anyway, but I will definitely keep you updated if I do get a new leaf before the end of this year. I think that would be really exciting. But I'm going to repot this plant now, so you know it might slow down and put its energy into roots, which I am 100% okay with. It's just letting it do its thing. So let's quickly do a brief. Soil, very, very chunky. Make it as chunky as you can. Watering, not a lot of watering. I water this plant every 2 weeks. Don't go overboard. Rather let this plant dry out a little bit and wait. If you are on the fence about watering and you're not 100% sure, the best thing to do is always wait a couple of days. Light-wise, a lot of light, a lot of light. I would not recommend direct summer sun because it does get autumn and winter sun, but I would not recommend summer direct sun, but definitely high light because it's a variegated plant. Humidity, I would recommend between the 60 to 70%. Temperature wise, this plant does like higher temperature, so I would not put this plant around any drafty areas. So unfortunately in my case, I do have to do something about that. I am just going to try and cover up that hole, but does not like drops in temperature. It likes very warm, tropical temperatures. This plant thrived in heat waves, so I would say probably between the 25 degrees to maybe 31, 32 degrees. That's when this plant really, really thrived for me. Propagating, really easy, same as any Monstera. You cut in between the modes and that is it. It's a really, really easy plant to propagate. This one is a little bit more on the slower side, so it might, you're not going to be able to propagate this one as much as a Monstera albo or deliciosa, but it is the same principle with propagating. And pest-wise, this plant has only ever had thrips, and I don't have a lot of damage from it. So I think pest-wise, this plant is pretty resilient because I've also had a lot of other pests in my home and it's not gotten any of the others, only thrips. But I think if I didn't do that unboxing, I wouldn't have had them. Okay, moving on to the repotting of this. So this is the mix that I have. Those are all of the components in there. Yes, it is a very, very chunky mix. This is also the cocoa husk, is something that I actually don't add in any of my other mixes. I sometimes do it for my philodendron, but I don't really feel the need to. But because of the chunky roots that Monstera have, I just really wanted to, you know, up the aeration in the mix. So that is my soil mix. I have my big pot, as I showed you. And unfortunately, I'm not going to be able to use this very pretty ceramic pot anymore, which I'm kind of sad about because I really like it. But that's okay, you know, constantly got to be changing with these things. So what I'm going to try and do is I'm not going to try and disturb this root system. I'm just going to pot it up into here. And yeah, it's going to be a nice upsize. I probably could go bigger. I really could, but I'm not going to because I don't really have the room for that. And once I do have to repot this plant again, I'm going to be very stressed out, but we will cross that bridge when we come to it. So I'm going to mix this up some more. I have already mixed it up pretty well, but the big chunky pieces of the cocoa husk, they do tend to go to the corners. So it is good that when you're repotting, just to do a lot of mixing with this. So I'm going to fill up the bottom. Okay, let's see where that takes me. A little bit more. There we go. I'm happy with that. So, oh my word. Wow, okay, this plant is very rooted in here. The pot is actually where you can see these thick roots. It is bulging. So I am gonna just, oh my word. I'm gonna press on it a little bit because especially the fresher roots, they are a little bit sticky and they kind of stick to the outside of the pot. Oh no. See, like here, I can feel this one here is sticking to the pot. Okay. Wow. Look at that. That's amazing. Okay. I am not going to do too much. I'm just going to do this. I don't want to stress this plant out any more than I have to. I am going to put it right up against... I hope you can see what I'm doing. There's so much foliage going on here. But I am going to push it right up to the side here. So I am going to see part of the roots, but it's because of the new nodes that are happening here. I want them to go into the pot. So I'm going to... I would actually ideally like to... Okay, I am going to do a little bit of fiddling. Oh my word. Okay, just a little bit so I can push it even more. I just want to prolong the amount of time that I'm going to be able to keep this in here. Put some that fell off back into the pot. Thou shall not waste. It's not been in this soil mix for very long anyway. And then, oh, kind of fill back up. I do sometimes with these very thick bits, I just kind of, I mean, it is nice, but these are so thick anyway. I don't want them to be too big, but honestly, it doesn't actually really matter. That's just me. I hope it's going to be able to stay in this pot for a while. Ideally, I would like where the plant actually starts to be right up against the pot, just so that I can make use a little bit more. But honestly, I don't think I'm going to be able to do that. Yeah, I'm going to try though. Okay, I'm not going to be able to do more than that because I can see the roots from the root ball. I hope I made enough. Wait, you can't see what I'm doing. I'm also not really worried about compacting this down just a tiny bit, just because it is so chunky, but I'm not going to push it down much. I want to keep that, you know, aeration. All right, so let's check and see, which is also something that's really nice. Yeah, you can see there. You know, that's the part that I pushed up against the pot. But I'm not worried about that. That's fine. But it looks good. It looks really good. Yeah, we're good. We're all good. Now, I did water this plant about 3 days ago. So I'm going to wait about a week before I water this plant again, maybe even longer. And then after that, I will probably end up, because there's more in here, I'll probably have to wait maybe 3 to 4 weeks to water it again. Okay, potted up into a really nice, a big pot. I think it's going to be so much happier. And like I said, water-wise, I'm not going to water it straight away. I don't want to risk it. So I have a tray at the bottom here that actually came with the pot, so that's ideal. And then I'm going to pop it in here. Voila. Yeah, honestly, I prefer the pot before, but you know, can't do much about that. But that was really easy, really nice up pot. And I think it's going to be so much happier for it. So yes, I hope that you enjoyed this video and found it useful and got some useful tips, and that it's made you think twice about the Thai constellation. And you know, if you want to make the decision to get one, I would personally highly recommend it, because I've had so much fun. And I actually recently got a Monstera elbow. So once I've got some experience growing that one, it's been about 2 years since I've had an elbow. So now that I have one again, I'm going to be taking a very different approach than I did before. But I will definitely keep you updated, and, you know, care-wise, if there's anything different there. But yes, I'm very, very excited. Obviously, the elbow is a lot faster grower and it's a climber. You can get this one to climb on a moss pole, but that's your own preference. If you want to put it on a moss pole or not, you can, but it will just grow very, very slowly and climb very slowly up that moss pole. So I personally don't really think it needs it, but you know, it's how you want to grow them in the first place. So yes, I love this plant. It's so beautiful. It's getting to the afternoon, so it's getting very bright in here. But yes, I hope that you enjoyed this video, found it useful. Leave me a comment down below if you have a Thai constellation and your experience with growing it, if there's anything different that you do. Yeah, I hope that you also get really nice, big, fast growth, because I have to say that this plant has sized up within every leaf quite a lot. It's gone from having only 2 fenestrations to having 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 fenestrations. That's like amazing. And that's 100% due to the highlight that this one gets and the conditions and all that. So yes, I hope that you can apply some of these tips to your Thai and hopefully get the same results. But yes, let's chat in the comments and let me know. Thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate you. If you like this video, please give it a thumbs up. If you haven't yet, please subscribe to my channel, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.